We do have a couple of other very good presentations for you this morning. So we're going to start out with Brent Moore, who is with CTA and previously a planner in Red Lodge, and he's going to give us a bit of a look at the development of Red Lodge, which is a very small city, but certainly one with a lot of activity and a tremendous amount of growth. So, Brent? Sorry? Thanks.
Good morning. I am not got all the way through. Okay, here I am. I'm going to talk a little bit about Red Lodge, which is a smaller community on the eastern side of the state. We've certainly been talking a lot about the western side of the state, but I'm going to talk about Red Lodge, and it's a place where I live and I work and I play. One thing I want to clarify is the brochure bio of me says that I'm a member of the AIA, and I want to clarify that I'm a member of the AICP, which means I'm an urban planner and not an architect. I work with a lot of great architects, but I wouldn't claim to be one, and I don't think they would want me to claim to be one. I'm a planner. So Red Lodge, as we've talked throughout the days, and Dennis Glick really highlighted, I think, this well yesterday, is a civic place. It's a place where people gather. We're there for a reason, and the reason really is historical. It was an old coal mining town, and that's when a lot of the wealth was generated in Red Lodge, and that's really a product of what we are today. I do want to give credit to Dennis and some other people that have, going back to 1994, have had an active role in ensuring that Red Lodge really, ensuring that Red Lodge really has thought a lot about its future and started planning pretty actively back in the mid-90s. This is a group of folks that have recently went on a walking tour with Dan Burden, who's with Walkable Communities, lived here in Missoula for a long time, does go around the country helping communities to focus on ensuring that they stay walkable. And the folks here in this picture really represent a pretty good cross-section of Red Lodge. When I was looking at this morning, it popped out at me that there's only one native in this picture, and that's the county commissioner, John Prinky, there on the right with a cowboy hat. John's a great guy, and it made me think that he really does a good job of putting up with the rest of us that have moved there from somewhere else. But in this picture, you've got a really good cross-section of leaders of the community. You've got bankers, business owners, developers, parks board members, a good group of cross-section of folks. And one thing that when you're thinking about civic activity is the community always wants to ask itself who we are, where are we going to go, and how are we going to get there? And that's what this is focusing on. So Red Lodge does have a growth policy. We talked a lot about growth policies yesterday, and that provides just a general vision for who Red Lodge thinks it is. And we do believe that like most of you in the communities that you live in, that Red Lodge is a great place to live. And one of the things that makes Red Lodge a great place is our active and vibrant downtown. And it has gone through ebbs and flows over time, but we do have a great downtown central business district. One of the big issues in Red Lodge these days is actually motorcycles. Red Lodge serves as a focal point for the Beartooth Rally, which is a motorcycle tour that goes up and over the Beartooth Pass. And the community is focusing a lot on, do we want to be this kind of destination? This is one event throughout the summer that brings in a lot of noise, traffic, but also a lot of economic activity in the community. And there's a lot of discussion in the community, active, lively discussion about, is this what we want to be? This is another great location in Red Lodge. It's off the beaten path, Regis Cafe, a great place to eat breakfast or lunch. It doesn't look like much, but it's a great gathering place. It's a place where people come, they discuss issues, and they're trying to serve as an example for the community how they can build sustainable practices into their business on a daily basis. The recognizable things you see in this picture, of course, are the solar panels, but they also have a free air system that takes cold air from the outdoors in the winter and cools their freezer, in addition to a number of other practices in having a fair on a yearly basis to focus on sustainable design. We also have other existing projects. We have a hospital, a nature center. We have local business people that are trying to just do business on a small scale. And we also have on the lower right here is a great example of a community build project that was done last summer. The community came together and built a new playground facility for the community. It took about a couple of weeks, but everyone got together and actually built this facility from all volunteer work. Again, you have active community members. There's Laura Getz. She's a banker and a real advocate for affordable housing. But I think we have to always recognize still that growth is a very personal issue. So the other question we ask is, where are we going as a community? And we have general broad statements in planning, and that great places attract more people. That's why we're here, of course. And so we have to be careful about how we plan to include those new people that come to our state. I think this is a great slide that Governor Schweitzer takes around and shows how a lot of the growth is occurring, of course, in the western part of the state. And I like to think that Red Lodge is right in the soul of that boot. We're a little bit behind everyone, but we still think that we're experiencing a significant amount of growth. Here again, you see the statistics that Cowboy Butte is based upon, and the green, of course, is the largest growth area in the project, or in the state, excuse me. And then the other demographic trend that we've talked about is the baby boomer generation, and certainly we're going to see a substantial increase of 65 years and older in the state of Montana over the next 20 years. So the city of Red Lodge, back in 1915, that was really the peak of the community. We were up to about 4,700 in population. And then in 1967, we had declined as the coal mining days had declined. And then we've seen moderate increases in population in the last 20 to 30 years. But we do have a projection out to 2017 of about 3,600. So that's adding 1,100 people to the small community of Red Lodge. So how are we going to get there? What do we need to do as a small community of 2,500 to make sure that this really small increase in our population allows us to maintain the character of our community? One thing you have to do is you do have to set boundaries. You have to recognize that a city is a powerful entity within an overall region and has a strong ability to direct where growth can go. And a city has to define its vision. It has to define where it believes it is going to grow so that both the private sector and the public have an understanding of where growth can occur. Another thing that smaller communities fail to do oftentimes is to understand the critical link between transportation and land use. And I think the earlier panel today clearly described why transportation is a huge issue for any community. But I have to make one kind of editorial comment in that I looked through the list of participants in this particular conference, and I don't see anyone here from the Montana Department of Transportation or anyone here from a local transportation entity. We don't really have it in Montana. We're not focusing on the critical link between transportation and land use. And I'm going to tell a short story about that. When I was a planner, the director of planning for the city of Red Lodge, the Montana Department of Transportation came out and they said, we're going to do this plan for you, Red Lodge. We're going to build a road for you. And one of the questions I asked them was, are you thinking about your land use implications of this road that you're building? And they said, the Montana Department of Transportation said to us, a local community that they were going to be investing in, we don't really pay too much attention to local land use issues. That's not our thing. We're about moving traffic. And I think there was a critical failure there to understand that there is a critical link between transportation and land use. For their benefit, we had a discussion about this. They went back to the drawing board, and they did come up with an access management plan that I think will really help the city of Red Lodge in preserving some of our northern corridor of town, which we're very concerned about right now because we see a lot of growth going out into the northern corridor of town, which has historically not developed. This slide here shows, on the left, shows an access management plan, which basically designates points where traffic has to have ingress and egress, so you don't have uncontrolled access. If you go through a lot of towns in Montana, and I'm not going to pick out any, but a lot of small towns particularly, you have a lot of uncontrolled access roads. And that means you have a lot of access points that on the one hand is very dangerous, but it creates clutter. It makes our roads look like they're cluttered. And the challenge is to not allow that to happen now for projects that are going to occur in the future. Another big thing the MDT is focusing on these days are roundabouts. And if you see on the right, that is a roundabout that the MDT is proposing in Red Lodge. And there was a lot of conversation at the time that they proposed the roundabout about whether or not the community thought people could adapt to going around a roundabout. And the real discussion was whether or not we wanted our first stoplight or whether or not we wanted a roundabout which could facilitate the same volume of traffic. And the community, after a number of meetings, decided that, sure, we'll take this roundabout. We'll take our chances and see what happens because we didn't want to have our first stoplight. This is a project that CTA is actually working on, and I'm going to go back to the other previous slide, and at the very northern portion of that slide on the left, you see it looks really relatively undeveloped along the northern corridor of town. This is a proposed hospital and assisted living facility, a new expansion of our existing hospital, and it's really at the northern edge of town. And a lot of us have a lot of concerns about this, but it's really going to happen. And so if it is going to happen, we want to make sure that the access at that point of town, the community entrance into town, is really thought a lot about. And so CTA has been working with both MDT and the local, the city, to ensure that the access plan that they designed for the hospital also meets the access plan that the city and MDT is working on. And it's a very simple solution, but it's a very challenging process to get to this point, to work with all the different entities to ensure that these kind of access plans occur. So you'll see at the bottom left of the screen, there's a full access, and then there's a 3/4 access and a half access, which is a right in, right out. And I think we have to be able to engage enough in this discussion to educate ourselves about the importance of what a 3/4 access is, right in, right out access is, even at the local small community level. We also have a new high school. This was designed by Collaborative Design Architects. It's going to be built by Hardy Construction. They just started moving dirt this last week, so we've got about a $10 million high school facility that's coming into the community of Red Lodge. There's a Beartooth Nature Center, another project that we're working on at CTA. It's a project that's about 5 miles out of town. And it's a relocation of an existing facility which is in town, which causes the community to need to have another plan for that space that they occupy in town that's going to be vacated. This provides a really good overview aerial shot of this northern corridor of town where we project a lot of the growth in the future to occur. You see at the bottom of that slide a cross-section of a subdivision that's currently being developed. It's the extension of the Red Lodge golf course, and it hadn't been developed until recently, even though it was originally subdivided in 1984. And there was a market downturn in Red Lodge during the early 90s, and as we see the market upturn, some investors from Florida have come in and purchased that property and are developing it. We also see some additional growth occurring to the north of that site, which is just on the left here. Around in this area is where the Spires development is occurring, and they were here last year, I know, and did a presentation on their project. And the big news in Red Lodge, actually, and if you saw the Billings Gazette yesterday, is that the Red Lodge Mountain has been purchased by an outside investor from San Francisco. So, of course, there's the mountain. JMA Ventures just purchased the mountain, so that really throws a lot of questions in the community about what it is that this is going to mean for our community. if they do in fact come in and invest heavily in that mountain and make the investments that need to be made for that mountain to be a more stable economic entity. But also, if they're going to invest in development, what does that mean for the community of Red Lodge? The other thing that I think we're really interested in Red Lodge, and it's a challenge because we're kind of off the beaten path, we're at the end of a road, but we are very interested in adaptive reuse. The community wants to see some of our older structures reused. And this quote comes directly out of our plan, again, our comprehensive growth policy, and it states that this plan provides policy guidance for the public investment and land use decisions that will determine the pattern and quality of future development. I think the one thing missing in that statement is also private investment. We have to recognize as a community that some of these structures that I'm going to show you next are really critical to get private investment interested in these projects. These are some projects where private investment is already occurring, the renovation of existing older homes. And of course, I think we have to recognize that the downtown of Red Lodge has been adaptively reused over time as well. But this is the Roosevelt Middle School, a structure in town that's going to be vacated with the new high school, and it sits right on Main Street, great location. What's its future use going to be? I don't know. This is the hospital, the Beartooth Hospital, and it sits in a residential neighborhood. Again, what is the future of this project going to be? Will the building be torn down? Will it be renovated? As a community, we don't know. This is a great building that's had some facade improvements done. It's called the Old Theatorium, but the inside is still vacant. A large structure sits vacant right off Main Street. There's a labor temple in downtown, and the first floor and the basement have been renovated and are used as a historical society, but there's two more floors above those floors, and they've been used historically as a bowling alley, a dance hall. What are they going to be used for in the future? We don't know, but we want them to be used as a community. This is a pea cannery. Again, another large historic structure off Main Street. Is there a use? Is there an adaptive reuse? How can the community facilitate the adaptive reuse of these structures? And lastly, it is obviously a place where I live and where around 2,500 residents live within the city again. And we want to make sure that as we grow as a community, we're cognizant of the fact that we are going to grow, that the investment that comes in matches our goals. And lastly, I think we're hopeful that we can do that. We're hopeful that we've set a good, solid foundation in Red Lodge to make sure that when private investment does come, it is a partner in our future. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Brent. Very good presentation. Next up, we have Paul Johansson, who's going to present. Paul is a partner in Great Northern Ventures with San Francisco or Bay Area venture capitalist named Mark Kwame, who has several interests in the Whitefish area, and Paul is heading up a lot of his interest there, and in particular the Whitefish Block project, which he's going to talk about today. Paul's a long-time, I guess, banker in Montana, and both in Missoula and in Whitefish. So, Paul, thank you very much.
Well, good morning. Again, my name is Paul Johansson, and I'm the managing member of Great Northern Ventures, LLC. We're a small whitefish-based development company. I have a big staff, all of whom have joined me here on the podium this morning. So I'm kind of it. I do the marketing, I do the planning, do the development. We do employ a lot of professionals, land use planners, architects, surveyors, so we're helping to support the Flathead economy tremendously. We mentioned my partner Mark Kwame, who is a Bay Area venture capitalist. He's one of my capital partners. My other capital partner is the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, owns a home in Sun Valley, but has a real tremendous interest in the Whitefish area. Well, if you'd cue the slides, please. Oh, I just got to click, okay. Technology geek here. We have two projects I'm going to talk to you about. The first one is the Homestead at Whitefish. It is a 1,400-acre rural residential subdivision. We have 40 20-acre lots currently planned and about 300 acres of open space. So the homestead is located west of Whitefish, about 10 miles. Of course, here's Whitefish and its suburbs, Kalispell and Columbia Falls. You take Highway 93 out of Whitefish towards Eureka, and you go to Farm to Market Road, and we're just about 2 miles south of Farm to Market Road. We're just a mile from Round Meadow Ski Area, and we are just about a mile and a half from Tally Lake. And those of you that are not familiar with Tally Lake, it's the deepest lake in Montana, which is it's almost 500 feet deep, where I'm told that unsuccessful managing members go to die. The plat of the property, again, it's about 1,400 acres. The original purchase ran down kind of this line, was about 1,250 acres. We created 8 lots through boundary line adjustments and then 32 additional lots in our preliminary plat, so again, 40 lots. But about a year ago, we purchased 150 acres on our southeast border here, which was a really strategic purchase for us because it includes this little Bootjack Lake, about a 9-acre lake, spring-fed lake, really spectacular lake, and I think I have some slides of Little Bootjack later. This also got us a little bit closer to Farm to Market Road. You can see we just have about a quarter of a mile space from Farm to Market Road, and we do have an easement across that property that's going to give us another emergency egress. And one of my planners is here this morning that I was talking to about that because the county, of course, loves lots of emergency egress. We're bordered on 2 sides by national forests, so Flathead National Forest, Tally Lake Ranger District is who's in charge of these. To the west of us is another residential subdivision. This is a 360-acre subdivision, all 20-acre lots. It is pretty much sold out, but only about a third developed. Only about a third of the lots have homes at this point. And then on our eastern border is a ranch that's about 800 acres, and we have a first right of refusal on this ranch, and have talked with the owner about even perhaps a joint venture with her on some things. The property is a spectacular property because as you come from the entrance here and you go west on the property, we gain about 1,000 feet in elevation. So as we go through the different phases, the property benches up continually through the last phases, and you get great views back to the east and to the north. To the east, we see Big Mountain, which is only about 5 miles away, 5 air miles away. But you also get views of Glacier Park. On our southern lots, you get great views of the Swans and the Missions, and from some of these lots, you can actually see Blacktail Ski Area. So as we go back up here, these are our future phases. Again, phase 1, 16 lots. We brought phase 1 on. We bought the property in 2003, began to develop infrastructure in 2004, brought our first lots on in late 2005. This map actually needs to be updated a little bit. You can see some of our sold parcels. We just closed last week on parcel 1, and we'll close the 1st of November on parcel 2. So we'll have 7 lots sold in just a little under 2 years. We feel pretty good about that, particularly with 3 lots closed this year in what's been a very soft market. I know you're probably experiencing it here, but the Northwest Montana Association of Realtor numbers show that through the end of September, our transactions are off about 50%, and total sales volumes are off about 40%. So we feel good that we've been able to close some deals. We had about 35 showings this summer. We had about 25 people stay on the property. I'll tell you a little bit about some of the amenities that we have. Here at the entrance, we have a business center. We call it the Hitchin Post, and it's about a 1,500-acre structure, all built from reclaimed wood. It looks like it's been there 100 years. Kind of goes with that whole homestead theme. That belongs to the Homeowners Association and can be used as a business center going forward. We actually have a 10-year lease on it to use it as a sales center. So that's typically when we show the property. That's where we begin the tour and we orient people to the property. We have a large 3D map so we can orient them to the property before we drive through. Up on the west side up here near Chinook Meadow, Chinook Lake and Chinook Meadow, and this is part of our 300 acres of open space. We have 2 homeowner guest cabins, and I have pictures of those cabins that I'll show you in a little bit. These cabins, again, are part of the homeowners association. We use them for marketing, so when people come up, they stay on the property, they can stay in one of the cabins. And then we also have a lodge on Little Bootjack Lake down here, and we also use that lodge for stays, but it'll be eventually, we haven't folded it into the homeowners association yet because it was a private residence when we bought it. We may sell it as a residence and then develop another lodge at the north end of Bootjack, which is actually a little more desirable location for a public lodge. We have about 9 miles of trail system. About 6 of that is built right now. We purchased our own equipment. We build our own trails. We built all of our own roads. My partner owns or bought a small road construction company, and so we lease his equipment, and we have employees, so we try and do everything ourselves. That helps us to be able to do things on schedule and at far less cost than if we had that service coming in. It's a very horse-friendly property, and it actually, I don't know, this was not initially planned this way, but the property's taken on a very equestrian-based theme. We have people contacting us from all over the country because if you look up here, oops, I'm not supposed to go forward. Up here, we have a livery stable up in Chinook Meadow, and we just finished pouring the floor, and hopefully by today they're framing this. We expect to have that complete by next spring. It's about a 10,000-acre stable. We think, I don't know, somebody might correct me, but we think we'll probably be the only development in northwest Montana where owners will be able to board their horses with us. They'll be able to own a horse, we'll take care of it, and they can come out and ride them whenever they'd like. We also have a vendor relationship with a guest ranch down the road that brings horses to us. So if people come out and they want to ride, we bring the horses to them and we trail ride principally on the property. Even though we have this equestrian theme and we have certain lots that people can keep horses on, we don't allow people to totally fence their properties. We have very strict CC&Rs that define building envelopes, so we try and keep building envelopes from being visible from roads, visible from other building envelopes. We control where people can fence so that they can't fence up to their driveways, they can't fence up to the public roads. And that helps, hopefully, to maintain that very open feeling and that, out in the woods sort of feeling. For a lot of these folks, owning 20 acres is a really spectacular dream. They come from urban areas where they, probably live in high-density housing projects. So the opportunity to have 20 acres of their own is really exciting to them. This is a slide that I took this because we just finished it's a before and after sort of slide, but one of the requirements that we have from the county is to put in fire drafting ponds, and so the upper slide is a pond that we built. It's a fire drafting pond, and it, obviously very industrial looking. So this year we went in and we made it a park. We figured that if we have to have this pond, we might as well make it an amenity as well. So we built the gazebo. We have actually hitching posts over here for horses. And then on the other side of this is a waterfall, and it's a waterfall that flows during the spring runoff. It's really spectacular in the spring runoff. It flows about 3 feet wide. And so this spring, as my partner was there with me, and I said, wouldn't it be great if we could recreate that? So we're actually building a recirculation system. We built a pond down below the waterfall, and we put in a recirculation pump, and we'll pump 350 gallons a minute back up the hill into the upper pond and then over the waterfall. So at the flip of a switch, we'll be able to recreate that spring runoff waterfall. So what we're really offering here is the amenities. There's lots of people that can sell you 20 acres in the Flathead. If you go online, there's tons of them for sale. But we think what we've packaged here is a set of amenities. This is one of our guest cabins. This is the Lewis cabin. The other one is the Clark cabin. They're very rustic. They look like they've been there a long time. All reclaimed exterior and interior materials. And again, these are for homeowners' use. The interiors carry that same rustic theme, but they're also very modern. We have high-speed internet, fiber optic throughout the development. These are gourmet kitchens with, wolf ranges and all that great stuff. So they're extremely comfortable. People feel like they're roughing it, but they can stay connected as well. Again, what we offer here is lifestyle as well. We try in all of our marketing materials, we try and show lots of people on the property, and that helps people understand lifestyle. Here's our lodge at Little Bootjack Lake, and some folks enjoying a trail ride this summer at Chinook Lake. So that's kind of it for the homestead. Here's our website. One of the things, my partner is a venture capitalist in the internet-based businesses, and so one of the things you get when you have a partner in that business is a great website. So please go out and look at this. It's very cool. The homestead at whitefish.com. So www. We'll talk now a little bit about our Block 46 project. This is a full city block in downtown Whitefish. The preliminary plan is for a complete redevelopment of the block, which we're not sure has ever been done in Montana. It's a mixed-use project. And to orient you to where it is, here's Highway 93 as you come into Whitefish, also known as Spokane Avenue. Okay. Here's Highway 2 going west. The Bulldog Saloon is right there. That might help some of you guys. Great Northern up here. Here's the block, and again, it's a full city block between 2nd and 3rd Street, Spokane Avenue, and Kalispell. It's directly south of Central School. Here's a photograph from above the block. You can see Central School in the background there and Big Mountain. Great location. It's on a busy street, but it's also off Central Avenue, so it's a little bit off the beaten path. You see this open blank space. There was when we bought the property, there was an Exxon station there. Last fall, we, with the Montana Department of Environmental Quality, we did a pretty extensive remediation there, removed almost 10,000 yards of contaminated soil. And that remediation has to continue north then, to this part of the property. There's some contamination there as well. So our plan for this property is, again, a mixed-use development that is retail, commercial, and residential. On the Spokane side here, we have about 10,000 feet of retail or office space currently planned. First floor here is residential. This is some of the support area for some of the other product. Second floor in this building is whole ownership condominiums that would be available in the short-term rental pool, so will function sort of as a hotel component. Third floor of this building are fractional residences, fractional vacation homes. And second, third floor of this building, this northern building, is also fractional ownership homes. This is all WB3 zoning and WR4 on this part of the block, so we have 16 townhomes. These are all attached homes. They will be 2- and 3-story, 2-story component down here on the south end, 3-story scaling up here. It's very residential on this corner, so we want to, you can see we've pulled back the buildings from the corner. We want to respect that residential nature of this corner of the block. The plan here we've been working on for about a year, and it's been planned with a master plan in mind. The city of Whitefish engaged a firm from Portland a few years ago to write a downtown master plan, and so we've tried to create a project here that has that master plan vision in mind. And as a matter of fact, the master plan, as one of its catalyst projects, calls for a 4-story hotel in downtown Whitefish, and that, again, we heard this earlier, is to activate and bring density into those downtowns to keep them vibrant and active. So we've tried to do something. It's obviously a large building. It encompasses 2/3 of a block, but you can see from the street, we've tried to create a look that doesn't feel like it's one large building. We want to kind of emulate what goes on in Central Avenue and downtown Whitefish, which are all buildings that were built at different times. So that's the look that we're striving for here, with a variety of building materials and a mixture of heights and bump outs. This is the residential side. These are those townhomes that we talked about on the southeast corner. This is not really the look we're looking for. I told the architects this looks a little too, I don't know, East Coast or something. We need to warm this up. I think we need to bring some wood or some other sort of materials into this, because it just doesn't have a Whitefish feel. So we're working on changing the look at this, but this kind of gives you a sense for the scale and the massing of that corner. Here's from the Kalispell Avenue side. This, of course, again, would be those townhomes over here. I think they did make some of the changes in this. This is the retail space, second and third floor, fractional ownership units. Oh, and I think I forgot to mention that on the fourth floor of this building and the Spokane Avenue building, we have four, I hesitate to use the word penthouse because that's not been well received in Whitefish. We have four really nice whole ownership units up there, apartments, if you will. Curiously, I've got 3 or 4 of those already spoken for. People have come to me, people that I know well, and have said, hey, I want one of those, don't care what the price is, I want one bad. So, the fourth story has been somewhat controversial. Just recently, the architectural firm that wrote the downtown master plan, which again specifically called for a 4-story hotel in downtown Whitefish, has now kind of gone 180 degrees on that, and they said, you need to preserve the character of downtown Whitefish. You need to hold building scale to 2 stories. And so we're kind of stepping back now, scratching our head and saying, well, wait a minute, we spent a year planning this thing that fits the master plan, and now you're telling us that it should only be 2 stories. If you want density, it's hard to do in 2 stories. And so the city is wrestling with this right now. And somebody, I think, yesterday during the program said, their city was growing up and trying to figure out what it wanted to be when it grew up. And that's sort of where Whitefish is right now. You probably all know, we've had an influx of a lot of wealth and escalating prices. And the community's struggling with that right now. So with this downtown project, we're sort of stepping back right now and waiting to see what direction the city wants to go. And we may have to re-engineer this thing to fit that. But my partners are very adamant that we're not gonna fight the city on it. That's just really not our style. We're going to try to do something that fits with the character and what the community wants, something that's well received. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. Appreciate it. For these short presentations, we don't have time for Q&A in the interest of seeing a lot of things, but of course everyone's around at the break and if you have questions, so forth. Next up is Randy Hafer, who's an architect in Billings and has some very interesting examples, I think, of sustainable green redevelopment in Billings. So, Randy?
Supposedly I'm mic'd here. Can you hear me? Because I'll now get up here and we'll feedback and you'll be able to really hear me. So I'll move that out of the way. Can you hear me back there? Am I turned on? I'm not turned on. What did I do wrong here? Oh. Okay, now, does that work? Still not working? Nope. I'll just use this then. I'll turn this off. Okay, well, we'll go back to the old-fashioned technology here. All right, let's see if I can run all this stuff. Okay, we are creeping a little bit eastward now. We're going all the way to Billings, Montana, on the other side of the mountains, even farther east than Red Lodge. And I wanted to talk about downtown Billings as a great project. We've done some really exciting things in downtown Billings in the last 10 years. And I think that it really is becoming a city. So what I'd like to talk about first is, first let me just start by saying that as an architect and a small-time developer, our firm has really 3 passions: downtowns, old buildings, and green. And we try to combine all of those things in what we do throughout all of our projects, but we particularly like to focus on what's happening in downtown Billings. So why are downtowns important? As we've heard some of the conversation today, downtown is the heart of every community. Downtowns are kind of like the core of the apple. Every city is like an apple. If you have a rotten core, you're not going to have a good apple. So we think that the place to really focus our attention is on the, what am I doing here? Okay, oh, there we go. Is on downtown. Downtowns are the clearest expression of a community's character and heritage and history. Downtowns are the commercial business center Downtowns invariably are populated with unique and interesting buildings. Downtowns are inherently pedestrian friendly, and one of the most important things is that downtown really is everyone's neighborhood. So for all those reasons, we like to work with downtowns. There's just a lot of good stuff there to begin with. And I think one of the great things about the West, frankly, at least our part of the West, is that almost every town, large or small, has a great downtown. That includes virtually every community in Montana, northern Wyoming, and Idaho. We have a lot of really good towns to work with. So how do we do these things? Working in downtowns, of course, we've got all kinds of givens when we start. And in response to some of the conversation that happened in the first panel, one of the things that I have come to recognize in our work, in our travels around the state, is that Billings is really blessed with a great downtown central business district zoning district. We don't have some of the challenges that seem to happen in other communities. For instance, an obvious one, there's no setback requirements. There are no height limitations. There are very few use restrictions. Basically, the only thing you can't do in downtown is industrial uses, which isn't too big of a problem. Mixed use is not a problem. And probably the most important thing is that there's no on-site parking requirement for downtown development. So parking becomes a development-driven and community-driven exercise, and it really works, I think, a lot better in terms of making projects work downtown. One of the other things that we did in Billings about 10, 12 years ago now is that we did go through a downtown master planning process. It was very grassroots oriented, it was a very inclusive process, and it resulted in really a visionary plan that was called the Framework Plan. There were literally thousands of people, probably 2,000 people that were involved at one time or another during that planning process. And out of that visioning process and planning process came this framework plan, which is a great document because it's very general. It talks a great deal about what downtown ought to be. It talks about what kinds of assets we already have, but it does not spell out specific answers. It just points out opportunities. We do also have in downtown Billings a tax increment district. That's really one of the few tools, frankly, that exists in this state to provide funding to help incentivize projects and build infrastructure. But we had a tax increment district in place. We were able to take the funding, the increment from that district, and apply it to a variety of programs that we developed in downtown, which was very successful in getting lots of things started. So those incentives were important, particularly in the beginning, because there were many perceptions about downtown development that we had to overcome, starting with just the idea of old buildings. Old buildings are just, everybody understands old buildings are economically not viable. There's no way to deal with the building codes. You can't bring them up to date. You should tear them down and start over again. We've proven that that's not true in any of those respects. There was lots of conversation about parking. There continues to be a lot of conversation about parking. We've proven that we have lots of parking in downtown Billings. It's not the same as parking at Walmart, however. And so there's a perception problem about parking. But there also, when perception is reality, we have to deal with that, and we have to figure out how to respond to that, and we've been able to do that. So I'm going to just walk through a few projects that we've been involved with and show you sort of the character of downtown. Again, 10 years ago, downtown was not dead, but it clearly was drifting. And there were some people frankly, it took some outsiders, some new people into town to look around and say, this is a pretty cool downtown, but if somebody doesn't pay attention to it, we're going to have a problem. So after going through the visioning process, creating the framework plan, and one of the components of that plan was that downtowns, in order to be successful, really need to have people living downtown. You've heard that more than once. You'll continue to hear that all the time. We think downtown residence is critical. This is a building that we did. It was the first one in town which I think makes it the first loft apartment project in 500 miles in any direction. But it was the first time that an old warehouse was converted to residential. It was the first project that redeveloped an existing building south of the tracks, which is a big deal in downtown Billings. And we were able to do that and put combined uses, with the first floor being office space. Our office is located in there, and then 5 loft apartments in the building. So we started, you can see on the right, it was just an empty warehouse with some really nice orange shag carpet. Upstairs, we converted that into our offices on the first floor and loft apartments on the second floor. And we actually have one unit in the basement as well. They were immediately successful, again addressing that whole issue of, does everybody want to have the half-acre lot with the giant backyard? The answer is no. Billings is a very diverse community. We don't have any one overwhelmingly dominant market segment. We have a lot of different segments, and in fact, probably the large lot, big yard sort of segment of the market, it would be a minority of the marketplace in Billings. So it was a difficult thing to do this. It's hard to go and sit down and talk to a banker and tell them that this is really a great idea when there aren't any anywhere, not only in sight, but anywhere without a long airplane ride away. And so it was a difficult project to put together. We did a lot of singing and dancing, but eventually persuaded the banks to help us out, and we got it built. This slide actually should have come a little later. I apologize for the sequencing here, but one of the issues that people, again, talked about initially was, we can't have downtown housing until we have downtown support types of businesses, including grocery stores. The reality of that is that you won't have a downtown grocery store until you have downtown housing. You won't have certain kinds of retail until you have the people living there, but the people will live there first without those things. The other reality is, and this would be certainly true of any city in Montana, is that from anywhere in downtown to any grocery store or any dry cleaners or any other service like that, it's probably closer than from most residential neighborhoods to those same facilities. And in fact, a lot of people, there is a grocery store that's immediately on the north edge of downtown that people from the south side walk to all the time. However, it is nice to be able to bring these kinds of amenities into downtown. This is the Good Earth Market, which is a building that we converted. It was, as you can see, it was originally an automotive garage, and we converted that into a Whole Foods, Natural Foods grocery store in downtown, and they specifically located downtown because of what they saw happening in the downtown neighborhood with people moving downtown. So we took what was a large open space, but definitely an automotive garage, pretty dingy, and with a lot of paint and not a lot of money, converted it into something that's very bright, cheerful, and attracts a good crowd. Their business has expanded dramatically since they moved to that location. Another loft project that we did on Montana Avenue, this is an area that had a number of vacant buildings adjacent to one another. You can see there's the boarded up storefront. This, in its last incarnation, which was the mid-90s, actually probably the early 90s, it was a drive-through pawn shop. We don't know exactly what that means, but there is a garage door over here, and you used to be able to drive into the building and pawn your stuff, and then you could actually sneak out the back and get away. Anyway, we've opened all that up. There's now light and life on the street. There's a new retail business located on the first floor. Again, this is a mixed-use building with loft apartments on the second floor. This building also had been through at least 3 fires, and again, was one of those things that a lot of people thought this kind of a building just needed to be torn down, and we proved that with some paint we could eliminate all the evidence of the fire and make it into a good building. We also took a building, the Maverick Fire Station, which was a really great architectural gem, one of the few prairie-style buildings in Billings, built in 1911. It was the second firehouse in the city. It had been decommissioned as a firehouse in the 60s, and then since that time, until 2003 when we bought it, had gone through a succession of uses, none of which really were particularly appropriate to the building, but just things that were put in there. And the city finally decided they were tired of being in the landlord business. The building was beginning to deteriorate. The $1 a year rents that they were getting really didn't support the building, so they put it up for sale. And a partner and I bought this building, again converted into a mixed-use building with his business on the first floor and 2 loft apartments up in the old fireman's quarters upstairs. So you can see this is his office on the first floor. We used a lot of salvaged materials in here. These are cabinet door fronts that came out of another building downtown that was actually torn down to make way for a new parking garage. The doors came out of a 1904 building that we're remodeling in downtown. The clear story was made from the window sashes that we took out of the upper story of the building when we replaced the windows. And then these are the loft apartments on the second floor, and that's kind of what it looked like on the inside. So again, we were able to transform this building in a pretty dramatic way and make it into a useful space. These are some buildings downtown. These are not projects that we did, and it's a little hard to see, but we've, during the time that this revitalization has been happening in downtown, we've gone from a situation in the early 90s when it was specifically forbidden to have a pot with flowers on it on the sidewalk in front of your business to outdoor dining and various patios and outdoor spaces. These buildings have all been renovated and just continue to contribute to the vitality downtown. I wanted to show this example because this is one where it just goes to show that you can take anything and fix it up. This building was a notorious bar. It was built in 1896. When we got a hold of it, the top floor had over 30 inches of pigeon guano on the floor. The roof membrane was almost completely gone, which meant that when you'd been down in this bar in its last years, your beer was, what was dripping into your beer was filtered through what was upstairs. Anyway, we were able to bring that thing back. This building is pending listing on the National Register of Historic Places now. And it went from looking like that, which was pretty awful, to having a Subway on the first floor, and it's just always amazing to me to go in there and eat lunch because it's really a hard thing to imagine with how it smelled initially. Another building, 4-story building, had been vacant for about 10 years, a great old warehouse building that we converted into a mixed use, whoops, one too many. Anyway, mixed use with the office on the lower floors and 2-story condominiums on the upper floors that you can see here. And that building is up and running now. This is a building that's just on the edge of downtown, on the south edge of downtown. It's the first LEED Platinum certified building in Montana, actually in 5 states. We took this concrete block nondescript bunker, which had been built in the 40s as a grocery store, almost windowless, and transformed it into this office building for Northern Plains Resource Council. It has a whole array of green systems and materials in it, photovoltaic panels on the roof, there's a solar hot water collector, composting toilets, you name it. We've made it into actually the greenest building in the region. Filled with light. It was originally almost windowless. It's now filled with light from clear stories on the roof and new windows that we cut in. The Stapleton building, this is the last one downtown. This at the time it was built in 1904, was the largest and tallest building in Billings, and was a major anchor. I mean, this was a time 1904. Billings was only about 22 years old. This was a big leap forward for the city when this building was built. This is what it looked like originally. Had a cornice, had a 14-foot high storefront on the first floor. It was just a beautiful building. In the 50s, it was modernized. So by modernizing, you rip the cornice off, you paint it white, you get rid of all the detail, you close down the storefront to 8 feet. And so what we did is just undid all that stuff, put the cornice back on, put the storefront back in, and we've got great interior spaces now retail on the first floor, two levels of condominiums on the upper floor. This is a construction photo, but this was a donut building that had a light well in the center, which we've enclosed and made that into the central circulation space. So it's a light-filled space on the inside of the building. And I think that's all, and I think I've run out of time. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Randy. I'm very happy to introduce our next speaker. Plum Creek Timber, as everybody knows, is a very important player in everything having to do with land and development and natural spaces and so forth in Montana. And we really appreciate Jerry is the Director of Land Asset Management for Plum Creek Timber, and we really appreciate his coming here to tell us a little bit about the company's plans. So, Jerry?
I want to thank New West for the opportunity to talk about Plum Creek at this conference. There's certainly a lot of different perspectives about how Montana should deal with growth and development, but I do think there's a lot of common ground, what I've heard the last couple days, and certainly we all really love this place that we live for its natural environment, and I think we also all want to try to do things to improve the economy, to make it more stable, as we go on in the future, especially for our kids and new generations. The conference is this conference I attended last year. I was very impressed at that too, and it's just a great opportunity to share different points of view and try to find some of that common ground, and I'm hopeful that it will lead to some action on a lot of folks' part. What I want to do is just kind of share some of the things that Plum Creek's been doing in Montana, and also want to give you some sense of how we think about our place here in this great state. The word of the day is change, and it's kind of fun to use a line from a Bob Dylan song, which states the obvious, which he's not known for. But also, he probably is not known for being highlighted at a real estate conference either. Our task is to anticipate, to plan, to manage for change. The timber industry is certainly in transition. Everybody knows that. We have macro effects that are affecting the way we do business. Certainly competition from foreign countries is pushing against the timber industry. Yesterday we heard that Washington Corporation is railing lumber from British Columbia. That's a macro effect. There's also some micro effects, and the two main drivers of those effects are, one is a decline in timber supply. The timber supply in Montana on federal lands has decreased by 70% since the 1980s. The second driver is just the increase in rural land values, which have increased substantially and are pushing up against timber values. If you look at, on a national level, rural land is appreciated at about 2 times the rate of timberland. If you look at Montana, it's even more dramatic. Over the last 5 years, rural land in Montana, rural land sales in Montana have gone up 20% per year for that 5-year period. And during that same time, the appreciation in value went up in a range between 8 and 15%. In fact, it's not uncommon for rural land to be 3 to 10 times more valuable than timberland at this point in time. Now, these statistics do not take in the 2007 season, and after what we heard yesterday, I'm not sure I want to go visit those, but we may see some dampening effect on that. Plum Creek will respond to the market changes. We'll look at all the options on our lands to gain value. We will continue to work in Montana as a responsible landowner in all of our business segments. And that includes the real estate, the manufacturing, and the timber management. We expect the demographics for this interest in rural land to continue as people want to have places for rural recreation as well as places for family legacy. We expect a strong market to continue in conservation. And we're going to work hard to be successful in all of our business segments. We've been in Montana a long time. Much of our land is part of the old railroad legacy. But in 1989, we split from the railroad and formed a master limited partnership that purchased all of the Plum Creek lands from the railroad. And I want to emphasize that word purchased because sometimes folks think that these lands were free. They were not. In 1993, we acquired all of the Champion International lands. That essentially doubled our land ownership in Montana to about 1.4 million acres. In 1999, we reorganized as a real estate investment trust. That allowed us to obtain much more capital to grow and expand as a company. We're the first company to be third-party certified in the Sustainable Forestry Initiative, which sets up objectives and standards for good management on the land. We have a history of growth and innovation in our company, in the way we process wood, both in the woods and at our manufacturing facilities, in the way we analyze our land and determine what are the best uses for that land, and in the way that we incorporate conservation into our planning. We employ over 1,400 people in Montana. We have 9 manufacturing facilities. Our regional headquarters in Columbia Falls is a center for information technology, for accounting, and many other corporate-wide services. We have a dedicated science team of 8 wildlife biologists, fish ecologists, and a hydrologist. In the backdrop, we're not only the largest landowner in Montana, but the largest private landowner in the United States. We own a little over 8 million acres in 18 states. But rest assured, Montana is very much an important part of our business. Change is a part of the landscape in our business. Our commitment is to be a responsible landowner and practice sound and honest business practices. This will help us navigate through this change. We know that our assets are more than just acres, that they're elk habitat, that they're trout streams, that they're hiking trails, that they're hunting grounds for people. And that's why we're committed to manage our lands in a way that enables us to continue as a publicly traded company and allows us or causes us to be a good steward of the land. This slide here of the Thompson River is an example, I think, of our stewardship. We were approached in the late 1990s, by the state under the Governor Roscoe's administration. The state came to us, wanted to purchase a conservation easement on 142,000 acres. At the time when they came to us, we thought they were crazy. It was an extremely difficult negotiation, both internally and externally. Internally, there were a lot of people in the company who didn't understand conservation easements, who were concerned that we could not get value for conservation easement to justify putting that on in perpetuity. And then externally, it was a very difficult negotiation trying to find the right value for this that we could get approval from our board of directors, and the value we ended up was, I will say, much higher than what the state originally expected. But at the end of the day, I think both sides feel it was a very fair deal, and at this point, it's considered a legacy deal in Montana. The company owns 1.2 million acres in northwest Montana. We work to achieve conservation outcomes. We provide opportunities for public access. All of our lands are open public lands and extensively used for hunting. You'll see a lot of orange out there if you went out today. And we try to engage in our communities, with our communities, in many venues and over many issues. Conservation has been a major focus. We've done about 284,000 acres in conservation sales, conservation easements, land exchanges. A couple highlights. This is actually in 1996. We sold 10 miles of the Blackfoot River and 12,000 acres to the Nature Conservancy about 20 miles east of town here in the Blackfoot River corridor near Johns Rood Park. This quarter, we're completing a very large landscape conservation project with the Nature Conservancy for the Blackfoot Valley that when it's completed, it'll be 88,000 acres of conservation that will go to various landowners, federal, state, private with conservation. That was with Nature Conservancy. We've sold about 10,000 acres in the Swan Valley. Our partner in the Swan Valley is the Trust for Public Land. And just recently, we completed another conservation easement in the Swan Valley of 7,200 acres at the north end of the valley in the area that is checkerboarded with the state forest. We also manage our land in accordance with a couple significant conservation agreements. We have a native fish habitat conservation plan on all of our land. This is a 30-year agreement with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It guides how we manage our lands, particularly in around fish-bearing streams, requiring extensive buffers. It also requires that we improve old logging roads to reduce sediment. To date, we've improved over 4,000 miles of roads. It also requires that for any land that we sell that has a fish-bearing stream, that we place covenants on the land that establishes a setback. The other conservation agreement is the grizzly bear agreement that we have in the Swan Valley. This agreement is with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service also, but also with the Flathead National Forest and the State Department of Lands, DNR. It promotes grizzly bear habitat and tries to establish connecting corridors between the Swan Mountain Wilderness and the Mission Mountain Wilderness. As part of this agreement, linkage zones have been established across the valley floor. 70% of Plum Creek's land in the valley falls within these linkage zones, and we've agreed that we will not sell land within these areas for other uses than conservation. It also requires that for any land we sell in the Swan Valley that's outside the linkage zones, that we place bear-friendly covenants on the lands, and these basically are covenants which don't allow fruit trees, don't allow open barbecue pits, require bear-proof food storage and garbage storage. Covenants were developed as a collaboration with Missoula County, the Fish and Wildlife Service, and it's my understanding are used as a model by Missoula County for some other subdivision projects. This is a slide of the Swan Valley. I apologize, it's not as clear as I hoped it would be. But it shows in the green is the federal ownership, about 65% of the land. The pink ownership is Plum Creek, about 20% of the land. About 10% of the land is state, that's in the blue, and there's a small, the white is the remaining land, about 5% that's in private ownership. The total area is about 370,000 acres. Again, Plum Creek has 70,000 acres, of which 70% is within these linkage zones, which amounts to about 50,000 acres. We have a thoughtful approach to land use planning and development. We support land use planning and zoning, which has not always been popular with some of our friends in the timber industry. We're very involved with land use plans, growth policies, zoning measures, neighborhood plans with all the counties, but particular Missoula, Flathead, and Lake County. This is very hard work, but we take it very seriously. In fact, just recently I was able to hire a full-time planner who has extensive experience in public and private planning to help us engage in these efforts. And Alan McCormick mentioned yesterday about one of the projects we're working on in the Seeley Lake area. We work closely. Some of the really tough issues that come up in the planning, of course, are the public access, which is a big issue, trying to maintain wildlife corridors, wildlife habitat, and more recently, the difficult issue of rural fire protection. We've also created our own development company. That company has a name, Township 110, with a tagline of Live the Outdoors. Typical, and this is a subsidiary to the Plum Creek REIT, the typical project that we do in our development company is 25 to 60 lots with a medium density of 5 to 10 acres. We have a high quality design, trying to design around natural amenities. And what we're trying to the market we're trying to capture are folks who want to live out in the country, enjoy the outdoors, but have more subdivision type amenities. This is an example of one of our projects. It's the Pines at Fisher River, and the second phase of that is a Parkside at Fisher River. It's located 45 miles west of Kalispell in the Chain of Lakes area on Highway 2. It's the first of what we hope for of several projects. It's planned with connecting roads, trails, has a sensitivity to the river. In fact, the river, there's a 50-acre park designed around the river here. The density is about 5 acres. It's designed with the topography. Sales in the first phase went very fast. It was 25 lots that sold out within a year. We have several other projects in the works. And we think that there's a good market for this and look forward to that. In summary, Plum Creek is a forestry, a manufacturing, a land company with a long history in Montana. We're committed to managing our lands in a way that maintains our timber base, maintains our manufacturing base, and also allows for land sales, land development. We are committed to do conservation. In all of this, we'll be a responsible landowner. In closing, I'd just like to thank Jonathan and the conference for inviting us to share some of our thoughts, and we look forward to being part of the discussion going forward on growth and development in Montana. For my last slide, I just want to show a picture. This is the Fisher River, which is part of the project in the park that I talked about at the Pines of Fisher River. So with that, I thank you and be glad to try to respond to some questions.
Thank you, Jerry. So we do have a few minutes for questions. I'm sure there are some questions on, for Jerry. I've got about 10. So if you want to, if you're getting tired of hearing me, you should ask your own. Okay. Well, I will start in. Where does Township 110? Where does that name come from?
Township 110 is the original township in Minnesota where Plum Creek is located, and the person who came from that location had a mill at that location, and he came to Columbia Falls in 1947 and started a mill which he called Plum Creek, which at that time was at about the same time that the Hungry Horse Dam was going to be built, and that mill was eventually purchased by Burlington Northern, and so that's the name.
In general, is your focus in terms of development, are you looking to develop lands that you designate as good for residential development? Do you plan to develop them yourself in general, or do you plan to partner with developers, or do you plan to sell that land?
All three. We go through a pretty thorough analysis of what lands we think that we can develop ourselves and do a good job with, and we also have some lands that we think we can find partners who have more expertise for those kinds of projects, and so we look for some opportunities for some joint venture. And then, of course, we have a land sale program where we sell large tracts of ground, usually 160 acres and above, which is an ongoing program. In fact, over the last 7 years, we've sold roughly 35,000 acres.
And what percentage of your current land holdings do you envision being developed through one of these three mechanisms, either sale, development yourself, or joint venture?
That's a really difficult question to answer, and one that we are constantly taking a look at, because we're a market-driven company, so depending on the markets will be kind of the main factor that will decide that. But in terms of actually developing land, we think it's in the neighborhood of 20 to 40,000 acres, roughly 3% of our holdings.
So 20 to 40,000 acres in Montana
Yes.
is what we're looking at, and that's sort of forever, you mean? Total over, I mean,
Well,
forever's a long
over-
time, but I mean for the foreseeable future, that's the,
Over a 10 to 15-year planning horizon, yeah.
okay. Question here?
Good morning. My name is Dale McCormick, and I have a question. A lot of the Plum Creek lands that were accessed for timber harvesting are accessed through Forest Service roads. And the question I have is there coordination with the Forest Service in terms of using those roads for residential development as opposed to extracting the resource that those roads are intended for?
Yeah, we're in constant communication with the Forest Service on road access issues, and when we decide to sell a piece of land, if it crosses a Forest Service road, we try to work with them. In most cases, it's a cost share road, which is open to other uses. Now, if the person who buys that property wants to subsequently develop it, then he'll have to go back to the Forest Service and probably renegotiate kind of the nature of that easement. But we work very closely with them, yeah.
Jerry, my name's Andrew Hagemeyer. I work with Flathead County Planning and Zoning back here.
Okay.
You said that you're for planning and for zoning, which we're stoked about, but I was wondering what your position on impact fees is.
Well, we are very open to impact fees. In fact, the planner that I mentioned that we brought on board, many of you here may know him, Dave Greer, is actually on the impact fee committee in Flathead County. We support impact fees as long as they're fair and they're equally spread out with folks. You bet.
Question. Well, as a kind of a last question, when you talk to people, sort of in general, this is going to sound kind of vague, but when you talk to people about land development and the kind of the future of Western Montana, people often raise Plum Creek as kind of a scary thing. Like, you know, there's this company that owns all this land and they're going to sell it all off and build it over, and they're not, you know, talking to anyone, and they, you know, that's sort of what the sense is from a lot of people. So I wanted to ask, you know, where you think that comes from, and if in fact you're, you know, and I think the fact that you're here speaks to this to some extent, but is there a kind of explicit effort on the part of the company to be kind of more communicative and be more engaged with the communities in some of these efforts? I mean, is that a kind of a shift that's happened, or do you feel like you've always been, open about what you're doing?
Well, I think it's changed over time. I think when I started with the company, we were probably much more open. Of course, it was a smaller company at that time, and then as we grew after becoming a REIT to being a large landowner across the nation, I think we maybe stepped back a little bit and did not engage with our communities as much as we should have. We felt the effects of that here in Montana. As many of you know, there was a series of articles in the Missoulian about timber in transition, which focused to a great extent on Plum Creek and criticized the company for not being more transparent. We've had a lot of discussions about that, and we're making efforts at this point in time to be much more open. Having said that, I will say that we have always worked with the counties and with the planning shops on land use planning matters, but in terms of a broader public exposure, we're trying to engage more in that arena.
Great. Do we have one question in the front here? No? Okay. All right, well, thank you very much, Jerry. Again, we really appreciate your coming.